Genius or monster? Which word fits you better?
You are sitting across from a man who burned entire cities to the ground and slept peacefully that same night. A man who ordered the hands of 40,000 Gallic prisoners chopped off in a single afternoon and sent them stumbling back to their villages as a message written in blood and bone. You want me to pick one word? I am the man who saw a dying republic choking on its own greed and had the stomach to do what every coward in the Senate was too scared to do. If that makes me a monster, then Rome was built by monsters, and you are living in the world we bled to build for you.
That sounds like you are proud of the body count.
I am proud that I did not pretend it was someone else's job. The Senate sat in their marble chairs, fat and comfortable, while Gallic raiders crossed our borders, burned Roman farms to ash, kidnapped women and children from their beds, and nailed the severed heads of our soldiers to wooden posts along the roads as warnings. Those senators debated for a decade while Roman blood soaked into foreign dirt. I stopped the bleeding with my own hands. The fact that stopping it meant I had to spill even more is not something I will lose sleep over in this life or the next one.
Nobody talks about your wives, and you had 3 of them. Tell me about the first one.
Cornelia was the only human being who ever saw me afraid. I married her when I was 17, and the dictator Sulla personally ordered me to divorce her or die. Every advisor I had said, "Give her up and save yourself. She is just a girl, and you are going to get killed over a marriage that is barely a year old." I looked Sulla in the face, the most dangerous man in Rome, a man who had death lists nailed to the forum walls with thousands of names on them, and I said, "No, I am not giving her up."
What happened after that?
They came for me that same week, and I ran for my life. I hid in swamps, barns, ditches, anywhere I could find a shadow big enough to fit my body. Sulla's soldiers searched every road and every village looking for me. I was 20 years old, sleeping in mud, eating whatever I could steal from fields, shaking with fever, and I still would not say the words they wanted me to say. I nearly died in a drainage ditch outside Rome because I refused to betray the woman I loved. Before I ever picked up a sword, I was willing to die for something that mattered.
What happened to Cornelia?
She stayed with me through all of it, through the hiding, the poverty, the years when I had nothing but a name and a grudge against every powerful man in Rome. She gave me my daughter Julia. She held our family together when I could not. And then she got sick one night and she just stopped breathing while I sat next to her bed holding her hand. That was all it took to end everything. No warning, no battle, no enemy I could fight. Just a fever and a body that went cold under a blanket. I gave her funeral speech in front of the whole city and I cried until I could not see the crowd. Roman men did not cry in public. Roman generals absolutely did not cry in public. I did not care what any of them thought of me. She earned every tear I had in my body, and if any man in that crowd thought I was weak for weeping over my dead wife, he was welcome to come find me later and test that theory with a sword in his hand.
And your second wife, Pompeia?
A man named Clodius dressed as a woman and snuck into our home during a sacred ceremony restricted to women only. He was found hiding in Pompeia's bedroom. I divorced her the next morning before the sun came up. The Senate asked me why, and I told them the wife of Caesar must be above all suspicion. I never asked Pompeia what happened in that room because the answer did not matter to me. The question existing at all was enough to end everything between us.
Your Gallic campaigns killed over 1 million people. What did that actually look like on the ground?
At Avaricum, my soldiers had not eaten in 6 days. They were chewing leather straps off their own armor just to keep standing upright. When we finally broke through the walls of that city, I turned my men loose and they slaughtered every living thing inside those walls. 30,000 dead in a single afternoon. Men, women, children, old people, even the animals in the streets. The cobblestones were so slippery with blood that soldiers kept falling while they chased down screaming survivors through the alleyways. Mothers threw their own babies from the city walls rather than let my legions get their hands on them. I watched the whole thing from a ridge above the city, and I did not call it off. Those people had been starving my men to death for weeks. My soldiers earned their anger, and I was not about to rob them of it.
You also ordered thousands of men's hands cut off at Uxellodunum, so tell me why you did that.
I did not have them killed. I had their hands removed at the wrist instead. I sent thousands of men walking back to their home villages holding up bleeding stumps wrapped in dirty cloth, dripping a trail of blood across the countryside for miles. I did that so every tribe in Gaul would see with their own eyes what happened to people who fought against Rome. Call it whatever you want, but nobody in Gaul picked up a sword against us after that.
Tell me about Alesia, the battle that military schools still teach today.
Alesia is the day I should have died. Vercingetorix locked himself inside the city with 80,000 starving fighters. 250,000 more Gallic warriors were marching from every direction to crush my army from behind. My engineers built 2 rings of walls around that city. Between those walls we dug trenches, flooded them with river water, and buried sharpened stakes in hidden pits that would impale a horse through the chest at full speed. We hammered iron hooks into the ground and covered them with loose dirt so any man who charged our lines would get his foot torn open and be pinned screaming to the earth while my archers shot him full of arrows. We held those walls for days with no food in our stomachs and no sleep behind our eyes. I stood on the ramparts watching a sea of Gallic fighters flooding the valley, and I knew that if a single section of wall cracked, every Roman inside that ring would be dead before sunset. My cavalry hit their flank at the perfect second, and the whole rebellion fell apart in an afternoon. Vercingetorix walked out the gates next morning and threw his sword at my feet. 6 years later, they strangled him in a dungeon under the Forum with a leather cord, while I sat upstairs getting applause from the same senators who had been too afraid to fight him.
The Senate told you to come home with no army, but you crossed the Rubicon and started a civil war instead of surrendering.
Because Pompey and his allies were going to destroy me the second I became defenseless. They were going to drag me into a rigged courtroom, strip everything I owned, and exile me to some forgotten rock in the ocean, where I would rot until nobody remembered my name. I had 2 choices that night: walk into my own execution like a lamb, or cross a river and make every one of my enemies regret being born. I waded into that cold black water with the 13th Legion behind me, and whispered, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast, to the soldiers at my side. Behind me, 500 years of Roman law caught fire.
That civil war lasted 4 years and killed tens of thousands of Romans.
After every single battle I won, I walked through the enemy camp and offered mercy to survivors who had been trying to kill me hours earlier. When Sulla won his civil war a generation before mine, he turned murder into a legal business. He posted death lists and let his supporters butcher thousands of citizens in their own homes, in front of their families, and then seize everything they owned. I could have done the same thing. I had the power and every excuse in the world. I chose forgiveness instead, and that forgiveness is the exact thing that got me killed.
Tell me about Cleopatra.
Her brother Ptolemy murdered Pompey before I arrived in Egypt and presented me with his severed head on a silver plate, expecting me to be grateful. The sight made my throat close. Cleopatra had been sentenced to death by that same brother. She had herself rolled inside a linen sack and smuggled past palace guards who had standing kill orders against her. She stepped out of that sack onto my floor and within 1 hour laid out a plan for controlling Egypt that made every senator I had ever met look like a child playing in the mud. She was the sharpest mind I encountered in 56 years of breathing. She gave me a son named Caesarion.
You also made yourself dictator for life and rewrote the entire legal system. Why did that make the Senate want to kill you?
Because every reform I signed ripped money and power out of the hands of the men at the top. I took land from the rich and gave it to veterans and poor families. I gave citizenship to people across the provinces who had been treated like animals for generations. Every single change I made was designed to rebuild Rome for the people who actually bled for it. And the men who had been robbing it blind for centuries started sharpening their knives the second they realized I was never going to stop.
March 15th, the Ides of March. What happened that morning?
Calpurnia woke up screaming so loud it shook me out of a dead sleep. She grabbed both my arms and her nails tore my skin. She was shaking, crying, barely able to get the words out. She told me she had dreamed of holding my dead body in her arms while blood soaked through her dress and flooded our bedroom floor. She got on her knees on the cold stone tiles and begged me not to leave the house. She was pulling at my robes with both fists, telling me she could feel something terrible waiting at the Senate, like a living thing crouching in the shadows. A man named Spurinna had warned me weeks before to beware the Ides of March. Every sign was pointing the same direction. I lifted Calpurnia off the floor, held her face in both my hands, kissed her on the forehead, and told her I would be home before dark. That was the last time she ever touched me while I was breathing. And I think about her face in that doorway watching me walk away more than I think about any battle I ever fought or any city I ever burned.
What happened when you walked into the Senate that morning?
60 men were standing in a half circle around my chair. I did not notice the knives until the first one went into my neck just below the jaw. The blood was warm running down my chest. I grabbed the arm of the man who cut me and tried to fight him off. But a second blade went into my ribs and I heard the bone crack inside my own body. By the fifth or sixth wound, my legs went numb and I started sinking toward the floor. Blood was running into my eyes so thick I could not see the faces of the men killing me. Then I saw Brutus, the son of a woman I had loved for years, a man I had pardoned after he fought against me at Pharsalus, a man I had promoted, protected, and trusted like my own blood. He pushed his dagger in and twisted it. I pulled my toga over my head because I did not want any of them to see the look in my eyes when I hit the floor. 23 stab wounds from men I had fed at my own table, from men who owed their careers and their lives to the mercy I had shown them when I could have had every one of them killed. I was too generous to the wrong people, and that generosity is what put me on that cold marble floor.
After your assassination, the republic your killers tried to save died within 2 years anyway. Your heir became the first emperor.
Brutus and Cassius butchered me on that floor to protect the republic from one man having too much power. Within 2 years, both of them were dead on distant battlefields. Their armies were scattered to dust, and the republic they killed me to save was gone from the earth forever. My adopted son, Octavian, took everything I built and turned it into a hereditary empire that lasted 500 years. They killed me to stop an empire, and my death is the very thing that created one. What should people remember about Julius Caesar? That I hid in ditches for a girl I loved before I ever held a sword. That I conquered a continent, reformed a calendar you still use every morning, built roads that lasted centuries, and fed the people that every senator before me had left to starve. That I loved 3 women and buried the one who mattered most when I was still young enough to feel everything. That I was stabbed to death by men who called it justice, while their real motive was protecting their money from a man who believed Rome belonged to everyone who bled for it.
Was all of it worth the price you paid?
I lived more in 56 years than most men live across 1,000 lifetimes. And 2,000 years after they killed me, you are still saying my name.